just think about what people don't know about your service. That's one thing. Just think about which people don't know about your service. If you can identify that group, there's a way that you can bridge that gap and then ultimately bridge the gap for them.
Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and I'm excited about our talk today because anytime that we talk about acquiring new clients, everybody's ears perk up. It's almost like this is like the cotton candy of business ownership is like, oh, how do I get more leads? How do I get more clients? The reality is that you don't always want more clients. Sometimes you just want to do a better job of serving the clients that you have. You want to do a better job of converting leads to clients. So there's a lot of place in the business to really move the needle on your business growth and your profitability. However, if we're going to talk about getting leads and getting leads that nobody else is getting, oh my goodness, that's juicy stuff. So I'm excited to jump into the conversation today with a repeat guest here on the Profit with Law podcast. Now, let me tell you about Jan Roos. So Jan and I go back way back to when I first decided to lean into law firms. So what's interesting is that I didn't start off working with law firm owners. I actually started off working with online business owners, coaches, course creators, information product owners. And then that wasn't going so well for me. So I aligned with the Profit First brand. I became a Profit First professional. And then they ended up giving me a lead that was a law firm in Manhattan. They became a client, introduced me to other clients. Before I knew it, I had 5 law firms as clients of my tax business, realized that 4 out of those 5 had the same problem. Really nice, beautiful looking businesses on the outside, nice office, staff, cases coming through the door, but really poor on the inside. Cash flow is awful. Moving personal funds in to cover payroll, cover rent. And that's when I decided there is an industry here that needs my help. I'm going to stick my stake in the ground. I'm going to work with law firms. But what do I know about law firms? So I went on Amazon and I bought every law firm book that was out there. And then I went on LinkedIn and tried to connect with all the authors of those books. Only one author responded to me. And it was the author of Legal Marketing Fastlane. His name, I didn't even know how to pronounce it at the time. I thought it was Jan Roos. And he responded to me and he's like, hey, let's jump on a call. And I remember I was sitting somewhere in Jersey outside of a client in my car, and I jumped on the phone and we had a great conversation. And since then we've met up in the city and went out to lunch. He's been a speaker at all of our law firm growth summits. He's been on the podcast before. Jan is just an incredible human being, incredible individual. And I am super excited to be having him here once again on the podcast. What's really cool is that he's constantly evolving as a professional, as a marketer, understanding the industry. Last time that he was here, we talked about this concept of outbound dialing and really getting clients in that way and moving against the grain of what everyone else is doing. And today we're going to have a similar conversation, completely different, where everybody is trying to win at SEO and Google search. But what if you can get your clients before they're searching? What if you can get your clients before they even know they have a problem or know that you're the solution to their problem? I'm really excited to jump into that conversation today. Jan, welcome to the show.
All right, Moshe, that was a heck of an introduction. Thank you so much once again.
You know what? I didn't do your official bio. Jan Roos is an award-winning entrepreneur, author, and speaker. Within a year of starting as a freelance media buyer, he was working with some of the largest personal injury law firms in the country. Since then, his company, Case Fuel, and podcast of the same name, I think, has worked with hundreds of law firms across all the major practice areas and managed over $10 million in ad spend across all of the major ad networks. The practice has expanded to include conversion rate optimization, intake, and leadership training to help law firms get the highest return on their investment and scale their firms with confidence. Now, Jan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. I think I like yours better, by the way. I have something for the book jacket, but it is what it is. So yeah, no, that's a fantastic way. I mean, like, where do you want to start as far as the marketing stuff?
Well, I really think that painting the picture of, and it's interesting because when I teach marketing in my coaching program, when I have this Um, I have this graphic that I show them, and I'm like, okay, so there's a buyer, right? They're out there, right? There is a stage of awareness, and at the beginning, they're not even aware that they have a problem. Then they become aware of the problem, but they don't know what the solution is. And then they become aware of the solution, but they don't know who provides that solution. Then they become aware of who the providers are, and that's where they find you, right? And then, so we have different entry points where we can enter that conversation. And I think that what you're working on today and where we're going to be talking is where they don't even know they have a problem yet. And you
Yeah.
gave a great example of Medicare applications. I think that's a great place to start, or with just highlighting what this might look like for our listeners.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, yeah, we can start there. So I want to kind of start off by saying just what this is going to be a good podcast for. And I mean, the traditional way works really, really well for a lot of people. Like if you've got, and this is kind of funny, the last call I was on with a client, this is a gentleman running the largest criminal practice in a major city in the United States. I won't go more detail beyond that, but this guy was spending $2,700 per day. If you've got that kind of money, that's great. Go with search. It's fantastic. If you got a couple practice areas that absolutely cannot deal with something before a problem exists, I'm thinking like catastrophic PI, like, DWI, you can't really pre-market that stuff too much. Don't worry about that. But for pretty much a lot of other practice areas, this is a fantastic opportunity. So I think Medicaid's all right. So basically the emergency Medicaid applications and pre-planning for elder needs basically. And so, well, if you guys are into the trust and estates world, you'll know how that happens. It's like a great example. So it's kind of interesting. I like to kind of draw this metaphor. There's a lot of fish that you can catch with like a regular hook or a line, or like even like trawling and stuff. But there's some fish, and I found out about this a weird way. I was getting into some like strange stuff on YouTube, but like parrotfish, for example, you can't catch parrotfish with a hook because parrotfish. Carrotfish. Parrotfish eat coral. So the only way to get parrotfish is you got to go out there with a spear gun. I haven't done this, but anyways, it's like one of these things. So similarly, Medicaid was something that a lot of people came to us in the estate planning world, and they're like, people aren't searching for this stuff. And I think it's a really good example, Moshe, because basically, when we talk about an emergency Medicaid application or forming an irrevocable trust for the purpose of protecting assets that aren't going to get attacked by Medicaid, um, this isn't a problem that anyone outside of the law knows, right? So similarly, those are sort of parrotfish clients, if you want to think about it. They're not going to type in emergency Medicaid application lawyer near me because they have no idea that this problem is something that's solvable. The problem that's in front of them is they're either concerned because mom just broke her hip and she has to go into skilled care, and I just did the math on how much that's going to work, and holy moly, that's going to be a lot. Or they're actively in skilled care. They've been spending $8, 10, $15,000 per month, and they're realizing that they're going to have to sell their cabin and pretty soon their primary residence, and they're just living in the terrible situation. But the thing that's crazy is that when you understand what that situation is and you can target those people directly, that's not something other people know about. That's not something that the 20 PPC agencies that are cold emailing you and then in your inbox right now are going to try to do, because that's not something that they have on their copy paste campaign list. It gets a lot more complicated beyond the keyword search. And I know that's just kind of like framing the problem, but there's a lot of process that goes into it past that point. But that's basically what we're kind of talking about. Stuff that people don't even have the ability to access.
Yeah, I want to give it even more color. So, there's actually two types of people who should be paying attention to this podcast. One is the ones who PPC is not going to work for, right? Just having good keywords that search is going to produce a result for is not good for, because people are not searching for it, which is the example you gave. The other is the people. So when it comes to winning at Google search, whoever has the most money wins, right? And what that means is that if there's a bigger player out there who's spending more money than you, who has more money to spend than you, they're going to win in Google search. They're going to win in SEO because they're making the investment. If you don't have 10, 15, $20,000 a month to spend, then you're going to lose. or you're going to have poor results. So you'll get cases, but the monetization of that is going to be very difficult because you're paying so much for those clients. So it becomes a place where you just simply can't play. So when you can't play there, you're forced to do other things. And what a lot of people do, especially if it's B2C, is okay, let me go and find referral partners. Let me go and do host seminars. Let me get involved in community events and get my name out there. But what if there's another way? What if there is a way to be proactive and earlier in the process? It's harder because you need to educate the market, but you're going to enter the conversation before they're looking, and therefore they're never going to search you. You're not going to be competing against all those other people. So I really think that this can work for a lot more people than we realize. Anybody in family law, anybody in estate planning, anybody in bankruptcy. I mean, anything where your client has a problem, like you said, it's predictable, right? You can't predict somebody's going to commit a crime. You can't predict somebody's going to have a horrific accident. Um, and therefore, those you have to just come in when they find out about it, right? So that's why personal injury, there's a lot of success in getting to know the medical providers because somebody will seek medical care before they're looking for an attorney.
Mm.
And but with criminal, where are they looking for a lawyer? It's either they have buddies who are criminals who are telling them where to go, or they're doing a Google search. And that's why Google search for criminal law, for example, is the place you have to play, right? You have no
Yeah.
choice. But I think that there's a lot of practice areas, a lot of listeners who can probably do this. And I'm excited to just spend the next 20 minutes diving into what this looks like and how you frame it.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that. So um, how do you think about this and what are you doing? Are you doing an education session? Are you like how are you letting the market know there's a problem and then educating them on it?
Okay. Really good question. So the first thing is that yeah, like we kind of have to nail down something where the gap is in fact in the awareness. It's kind of funny you mentioned the criminal stuff because even within criminal, there's a couple of areas that, and again, we've tested that. We have ads for this stuff. Two things that are fantastic. One would be expungements. Not a lot of people know the circumstances which you can get a record expunge. I know it's not necessarily going to be like a high ticket DWI, but really, really good for getting a network built up, a lot of different other things. Another thing, appellate law. And this is kind of a funny story. I know you're talking about the situation where people know criminals. I knew an appellate lawyer in New York City, and he had a fantastic strategy. And it's kind of funny. None of the stuff that I'm talking about is stuff that I came up with. This is mostly observation. I've developed process for doing this, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the best firms have been doing this for decades. Anyways, this guy, fantastic example. So we actually did an AdWords campaign, but he had to advertise in multiple states because the volume for people searching appellate lawyer, again, a legal term that people generally don't know, super, super low. But if you guys know how to appellate courts work, it's like, multi-state, and he had a bunch of different circuits that he was in, so we could do that. But where his money was he basically was thinking, okay, what's the process? And we can use this kind of as an example. What's the process that somebody gets to before they get to the point where they're typing in appellate lawyer? With appeals, more often than not, it's not going to be the person in question who's doing this research from inside prison. That's difficult. A lot of the times it's mom, it's the wife, it's the kids, and they're doing research. So he was able to go upstream and actually write on various federal laws that you could use as the basis for appeal. So I remember one of his top keywords, hoping not I'm blowing this guy's spot up, but he was writing a lot of stuff on habeas corpus. So when somebody is ending up doing that, the logical next step is, all right, cool. Well, I know while I was looking into this stuff, I know that I can hire a lawyer as a result of doing this. And you kind of think about all these different entry points on the road to finally typing in that Google search and just ask yourself, what happens before you have the Google search? So that's kind of the first thing to sort of identify is think about the journey that people are coming into. I love family law as an example too. Family law can be both things, and a lot of legal practice areas are going to be both things. If you're getting served divorce papers, that is a 100% reactive. That is a reactive client. That is somebody who's typing in family attorney near me. And again, if you like those kind of cases, that's totally fine. But again, It's been a minute since I've done too many family law campaigns, but those cost per click, I'm talking, 50, 75, 100 last time we checked was a couple of years ago. I know those are probably getting upwards of 100 plus, especially if you're trying to gun for that top spot. Another alternative, if you want to pay 20 or $30 per thousand impressions, you can advertise. In this case, we've had awesome success with family law educational events. The two major things that we're going to do actually for the most part are going to be education or quizzes are another really fantastic way to do it. The thing that I like about education is that you're able to get a lot of differentiation in the process of doing it. With the family law, for example, right? So other side of that equation, right? The person who decides to go get the papers to file the divorce, there is a moment that they're making a decision, but that conversation's probably been on their mind for some time, months, years, maybe decades in some point, right? So if you can get into the place, what does somebody who is considering filing for divorce need to be thinking about? You can, and we have provided educational stuff for those people to end up getting that, going into that place. And the goal is to find somebody where they're at and take them one step further. So the person who's considering to file a divorce, could we get to the point where they're empowered to file for divorce? And again, we have to be really, really careful with the ethics of some of these things too, by the way. Like, one of the major things that we did in this education thing is like, where should you, right? There's some cut and dry examples of people that absolutely need to. And this is probably where this stuff is the most beneficial. Classic situation. You have somebody who has a domestic violence situation. They have a substance abuse situation. They are scared for their life to get out of the situation. But when we're empowering people to make the decision to file for divorce and we're showing them the protections they can get under the law, that's a fantastic use case. And by the way, before anyone like who's in the family law practice, I have heard these. There are people that are very affluent that have these situations. Probably a little bit more on the substance abuse side than the domestic violence side, but there's fantastic cases. And again, in a lot of situations, we're paying tens of dollars for the lead or the appointment in some cases, as opposed to 100 plus for a click. So that's kind of the outcome when you get these things lined up. And again, a little bit of work to get those guys all the way to that point, but it takes a little bit more thinking than picking a couple of keywords and throwing a landing page at it. But it's absolutely possible when you know how to do it.
Now, one of the things that I tend to do is I take something and then I overcomplicate it. So, like as you're talking, I'm like, yeah, like you can just get together with a therapist and you can have like a whole marriage seminar and, like, is that what we're talking about, or is it simpler than that?
Um, I would say it's kind of it's simpler in some ways, it's more complex in others, right? So my whole thought about this is that like you can kind of when you find one of these hooks, it's something that exists in the population that you're marketing to all the time, right? What I like about the partner seminar example is that it's not going to really cost you anything except for a little bit of shoe leather, but you're sort of at the mercy of who's in that room at that time, right? To contrast, when we have something that is targeting, and I'll use the example that we use probably the most is like estate planning, right? Active need. We've got a million ways to Sunday that we split test over hundreds of firms at this point to get that to work. But we just have one angle. We've got people that have been running the same presentation that's been pre-recorded, as a matter of fact, for pushing 3 or 4 years at this point. So the whole idea is like when you have a hook that's strong enough, you can just run that one play 24/7. And I like Facebook traffic. YouTube's also another really, really good one, especially for educational events. But in most instances, this is going to be something you record once and it's just your best shot every single time. So everyone's going into the best possible outcome for this. You don't have to worry about waking up on the right side of the bed. You don't have to worry about coming up with a different angle to make it fresh for the person who saw your best one last week. It's just take your one best shot and make that repeatable.
Okay, so let me see if I can break this down for the slow people in the room, meaning me. So somebody sees an ad on Facebook that has a hook, which I want to dive into what that might look
Mm-hmm.
like, but it has a hook that catches their attention, right?
Mm-hmm.
They say, "Oh, I need to know this." They click through to a landing page. They're putting in their name and their phone number, whatever, their email address. It's taking them to a training where you've pre-recorded this educational material to tell them about how, they can solve their problem, which might include your services. And then you're inviting them to book a call with you and then have a consult. Did I get that right? Is that the structure?
Yes, yes. And then that's one, and we didn't get into the quiz angle of that too, but that's kind of the other thing. But a super critical next step, and this is basically what we talked about a little bit on our last meeting motion, but something I've kind of realized the extended application of since getting more into this stuff. Your numbers for people that are going to book on their own generally going to be somewhere in the 10 to 20% range. 20 is fantastic. We can get 1 out of 5 people to watch a presentation to book a call. That's fantastic. The amount of people that will pick up their phone if you call them within 5 minutes of that presentation ending is upwards of 80%. And you can probably get about half of those people to book. So that's kind of where I'll just kind of cordon that off and say, well, listen to our last episode on how to do that. But adding just a little sprinkle of outbound to that can make the throughput for this kind of model go through the roof.
That's very interesting. We actually are in the middle of implementing something internal here, same concept. And we were planning to do outbound, but I we now need to taking that information. I mean, that's a huge flip between 20 and 80%. Taking that information and turning it into, okay, how long do we delay and wait to call them? What's the ideal time to pick up the phone and dial? But I really like that. And I recently engaged a YouTube ads agency where I booked the call, right? I went through their thing, I watched their presentation, I booked the call, and then I got a phone call from them saying that the call was canceled because I hadn't filled out a form, which I had. And I thought that it was a fluke or whatever, but I'm wondering if that was actually on purpose, like to have a reason to be talking to me and engaging me.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, I'm wondering about that. Um, okay, so we get them into this thing, and then we have a system to call them, and we'll link up the other interview with Jan. Actually, I'll tell you the episode number and then title in case you want to search our website or your podcast player. It's episode 242. Get your clients from contact to consultation with Jan Roos. So go back and listen to that. But I'm more interested in the hook because I think and the actual presentation, right? Like at the end of the day, you have to be the hook has to be something that's going to get them to take the next step, right? It needs to be the right thing that they're going to take action on. But then the presentation itself also needs to give them a compelling reason why they want to book a call with you, right? So
Mhm.
if we can spend maybe 5 minutes on each, I think that'll basically round out the show. How do I approach the hook? Is there like a testing methodology we can do? Like, how do I figure out what is the thing to be putting in front of them? Um, and we could continue with the family law example, or we can take another one. I mean, like bankruptcy, right? Like somebody doesn't just declare bankruptcy, they go into default for months before they're able to even go through the bankruptcy process. So they're probably trying to figure out how to get out of debt. They're probably trying to figure out how to fix their credit or, stuff like that. Like, how do you know what the hook is? And there's a whole sea of sharks that are swimming in that pond too, right? Like, because when you
Mhm.
go back to a previous problem, there's someone else who solves that problem, and therefore there's someone else who's marketing to that problem.
Yeah, well, that's a crazy example for bankruptcy too, because like we have a situation where like there's a lot of predatory lenders that are basically attacking that same group. But I would say in general, the tendency that I would have is that if we're going for people that we can give a perceived benefit to that's like super easy. So I'll give you an example. We've got a mass tort campaign that is absolutely crushing right now. And it's basically, it's funny enough, this is all mesothelioma stuff, which is like a famously high cost per click. We're getting leads for these guys for between 50 and $70 on YouTube week over week, which is crazy. But that's a quiz. That's a quiz And what we're doing there is, hey, do you qualify for XYZ from, I wish I could be a little more specific because he's got kind of a special sauce thing, which just out of respect for the client, I won't share. But hey, could you get 6, 7 figures based on your, asbestos exposure, right? So those kind of situations, and because there's a 6 or 7 figure payday on the end of that, people are going to not only drag themselves through as long of a survey as we want to have. I'd probably recommend keeping it like 3 to 5 questions, but it's not as necessary to have the education angle for that because they want it regardless. When we have a situation, if you're doing some sort of like a transactional or retainer based law, you probably are better off having the education angle in there just because the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, even if it's solving a legal problem, is going to be shelling out some cash, which people are generally a little bit more avoidant than receiving large sums of cash, to put it lightly. So basically, we have to kind of think about. I would tend to have the educational model. If at the end of the thing is then me slicing a check and then flip it the other way, right? So that being said, when we're talking about coming up with a hook, there actually is a testing methodology that we use. It's kind of funny. I actually haven't spoken about this on many podcasts, but and I don't know if, well, I'll just go ahead and shout them out. There's a fantastic methodology. These guys are called Mint CRO. You guys might have seen their ads at some point. Fantastic outfit. It was started by a gal by the name of Jess Jobs. She was on Microsoft's split testing team for Bing, actually. So millions of split tests. But to kind of make a long story short on that, like I always try to come up with a handful of different headlines, and then I will test those using a specific methodology just to make sure that we're seeing. The short answer is we're basically trying to see what has the highest click-through rate, and if we can get that, that's going to be the market voting with their feet as far as what they're going to actually go for. So that's sort of how we end up doing it. But basically, when we kind of identify what people are doing, we want to go ahead and test a bunch of different things as far as how they identify with that. One of the things that's kind of interesting, the campaign that we ended up doing for Medicaid, we actually ended up wanting to do that for dementia. But what we ended up finding out in the process of testing was that dementia wasn't really a term that people identified with. And all things equal, it's actually there certainly are people that are going to pursue Medicaid because they have dementia and they need care for that dementia, but it's a smaller part of the pot than the, total people who have issues that, result in them needing skilled care. So when we're kind of going into that stuff, and I'm switching practice areas like nobody's business. Sorry much.
No problem.
It's kind of thing too. So we kind of have to have like an identifying, and like, there's some interesting ways to do it. So a couple different formats that I really like. One is mistakes to avoid, or mistakes to avoid, things to consider if, and then just describe the situation and how to X. So all those different formulas work really, really well from an education perspective. And I would even give a slight vote to how, just because how tends to attract somebody who's more like, and it's really subtle because when we're talking about people who are considering something versus a Google search, like it's crazy. But like the thing is that when, I've been in this space for like such a long time with the estate planning stuff in particular, but just like, it's basically, there's very, very, it's like the Eskimos have like 23 words for snow. It's like, the pre-solution class, there's a lot of different stages in between there, but how is one of the better ones. So and I'm just going to do this on the fly here, if that's okay, just because you're going to that bankruptcy, you just be like, how to, and I'm just going to throw this out there, check us out. I'm not running this through any state bars, just like, how to, legally protect your home, vehicle, and legally discharge your debt. 3 steps to know, or something like that. I'll just use that on that. So in the process of doing something like that, we're calling out, and we'd have to get a little bit more fine grained on like the ad creative, but like one of the things that's really interesting, and this is kind of general copywriting stuff, but really more important at this stage. So I want to just also kind of step out and say, sorry if I'm getting too complicated here, Moshe, like the level of skill that you need to channel somebody who already decided they had a problem and get them to your website. And I'm not saying this throwing stones because I spent 150 grand on Google last month. it's not hard to sell somebody who typed in bankruptcy lawyer near me to bankruptcy lawyer. That is not a why question. They already figured that out for themselves. That is a who question. So you basically just need to look good, be the guy, right? Or gal. To get somebody who wasn't thinking about this, oftentimes an uncomfortable situation, to actually start thinking about this, we need to be more sophisticated. The headlines that we write for Google are a joke compared to the stuff that we have to do this, because we basically have to get their attention. And the way that we can do this is entering the conversation that's already in their head. So, and we do happen to have a lot of experience with the bankruptcy stuff as well. Funny enough, it's a huge legacy business for us. But like, what are the manifestations of somebody that probably should be thinking about this stuff, right? They're getting calls from debt collectors. They're figuring out which bill they're trying to pay at the end of the month. They might have people trying to repossess their stuff, right? When we start talking about these things, then we can basically say, hey, look, first of all, we're activating the part of their brain that was thinking about that problem. But we're also saying, hey, we know what's going on here. So we're automatically building trust in the matter and the means of doing that.
Yeah, I think this is great. I honestly, like, as we're talking about it, it's just making the case of why somebody should call you instead of trying to figure this out themselves. But what I always try to do here on the podcast is to at least get us to the point where somebody feels like, oh wow, like I get that, and maybe I can't do it myself, but I understand how I would do this if I was doing it myself, right?
Mm.
And disclaimer. I do not think attorneys should be running their own marketing. Like there's, it becomes this force of nature. Like because if you're too small, your budget's too small, you feel like you only have sweat equity. Like that's the only thing you can invest. And we should have a separate podcast on how to get capital to invest, because no, that's not true. You need to invest in your business. And if you're taking your time to do your marketing, first of all, you suck at it. Second of all, I'm saying that with love, right? Like you're an attorney. 99%, 98% of attorneys are just poor marketers. Now, you might be good at hiring the right people to do it. You look at some attorneys and like, wow, their marketing's on point. Yeah, because they put the right people in place for that. Um, or so you need to invest the money. But the nice thing is that with this concept, the investment doesn't have to be that great. You can test this with a smaller spend, and you can test different stages of the process and see what the results are, and then improve on it without needing to break the bank. So I really like this concept, and I think that people need to get really good at testing things, because what we think is the thing that's going to get people's attention, 9 times out of 10 is not, right? And we're our worst enemy, because we think that our idea is the best idea since sliced bread, and the reality is that it's not, and that's not what
Yeah.
people are responding to. So it's just very interesting. But ultimately, the hook is the hardest part of this whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Like you got to
100%.
get something that is going to get people to take a click, to get out of the Facebook feed and to do your thing. But then the moment that you do that, the next thing is how do I set this up so that they're primed for a conversation with me?
Okay.
And that's where, like, okay, I get the thing with the quiz. Like, if you have a big dollar payoff at the end, then it's part of your intake, right? Like, I'm getting them to
Mm.
take a quiz because I'm helping them identify what their chances of success are. And then the ones who have a great chance of success, we're going straight to book a call. As a matter of fact, we're calling them, right?
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that we're educating them and getting them to sign before they get wind of the fact that there are 10 other attorneys who do the same thing I do,
Mm.
right? Um, but on the education side, do you have a format for that education class where, because
Yeah.
you're not just educating them on why they need you, right? You're educating them on the problem as a whole. So there might be other solutions that don't include the legal route.
Yeah.
How much do you cover that? How much do you lean into that? What's the general format you use for this?
Yeah. And I actually can make this one super quick because I know we're getting short on time, but basically, like little fun on this. It's like it's all about show don't tell, right? You don't have to say that I know more about this than my competition, because the fact that you're talking about this for 45 minutes in an articulate way shows that. You don't have to say it. So for the most part, the format that we do, it's a three-step formula, and this is actually based on a really, really old direct mail copywriting formula. So it's called problem, agitate, solve. Problem. We're talking about what's going to happen if you don't do anything. Super classic one that we've done for a really, really long time in estate planning. Let's talk about probate. Let's talk about if you have to get into guardianship because you're incapacitated. Let's talk about nursing home bankruptcy. Boom. Agitate. This is where we show, and this is kind of for the smart Alex in the room that are watching the presentation, how you're going to mess this up if you do it on your own. Again, following on with the estate planning stuff too, this is stuff like, putting your son on the deed, trying to go El Cheapo LegalZoom route, a lot of other things that people do that are state specific. And then only after we've presented the problem, we've scared the crap out of them, then we can finally propose a solution. And funny enough, this is where most of the legal presentations that I've audited start, and things that no one really cares about how to solve the problem until they know they have a problem, right? But it's only after we have the problem established and we've scared people that we can start showing the solution. And that also segues beautifully into your call to action. So that's normally like, all right, let's talk about this is what these different, in the estate planning case, documents do. If you're talking about a different practice area, here's how we tend to help people out with this. This is what a family law case looks like. These are the steps that you have to take. And then finally, we close out. Ideally, I like to have, it's going to be a call to action to a next step. With this kind of stuff too, I'll also say it's a little bit different. You can go straight to a consultation, but I like to have a qualification call in between there. Two reasons. One, it's just an additional filtering mechanism. Like, we're going to have a higher volume of people, but you're also going to have a higher volume of people. So you want to keep develop your qualification criteria. And that would usually be like 10-15 minute call with somebody on your staff. And then at the same time, that's the same call that if somebody picks up after you called within 5 minutes because you set the notifications up, that's the same call that they're going to have. And then if they cross the threshold, they've got an active case, they have the means to take care of it, it's an active need, then and only then do you book them on the counter. But to that point, it's great because now you have a consultation. And even if they wanted to search, bankruptcy attorneys near me, you're the person that just talked to them about that topic for 45 minutes. They don't know whether these other guys are going to be doing a good job for them. So like, you've already entered with a leg up on the consultation. You're differentiated. And that's kind of the final thing to leave people with about the power of this, is that you're marketing differently. So you're less exchangeable. It's a huge leg up. You absolutely have to keep parlaying that into success. But that's really going to be the future, in my opinion, is that, even if you can pay for the click, there's nothing differentiating you from most of these people. All the landing pages are good. All the ads are good. You have to do the hard work if you want to separate yourself. And this is one path of doing that.
Yeah, I love it, and I think it's incredible. I think that ultimately it's going to take some work, some testing, some investing in this. But if you figure this out, you will be winning this game because you're getting people before they get to the point that they're searching for the attorney solution. And when you do that, you're essentially beating the system. It's going to get you leads for cheaper, but more importantly, it's going to get you a piece. It's almost like when you think of, and I don't believe in competition, right? Everyone says, oh, competition is basically you have a pie and everybody gets a section of the pie, and you're always trying to get a bigger piece of the pie. But what if you can make the pie bigger? And this is a situation where you can make the pie bigger. So your competition is no longer your competition if you figure this piece out, because they're looking for people that are not even in the world yet, right? Like, they don't even exist yet as far as they go. So really, really cool stuff. Yeah, and I appreciate you being here. And I'm going to finish with our usual close. Two things. One, parting piece of advice for our audience. Number two, how do they take a next step in learning more about you, getting to know you, connecting with you if maybe they want to use your services or anything like that?
Okay. Parting piece of advice, and this goes for every single practice here. I know we went over a couple ones, but just think about what people don't know about your service. That's one thing. Just think about which people don't know about your service. If you can identify that group, there's a way that you can bridge that gap and then ultimately bridge the gap for them. So that's going to be my one parting piece of advice. Where to find out more about me? I would say if you're a podcast person, check out the Law Firm Growth Podcast. That's going to be mine. We've got Moshe's the most frequent repeat guests that we've had. So definitely good. Check those ones out. Yeah. You're holding the crowd right now. And then if you talked about, I mean, basically, I actually really need to write a book about all this stuff. I think I realized I should have written this book first. But I wrote a book on the other stuff that we were kind of mentioning. If you go to beyondintakebook.com, that's going to be the book for that. It's crazy cheap. I think when we ended up doing it, it's $297 or something like that. But I literally give the entire blueprint on how to do anything with this type of marketing. And as a matter of fact, any other marketing, it's going to juice it up. But I'm all about return on investment. And the longer I go into this journey, the more I realize it's more than the clicks. So, anyways, beyondintakebook.com.
Awesome. Always great connecting with you, folks. We're here every single week, wrapping us up quickly because I've got somebody in the wings waiting for the batch podcast record here. So got our next recording coming up. But check us out. Every Thursday, we drop a new episode. Make sure you're subscribed to the show. Leave us a rating and review. Love having you here. And this was absolutely incredible as usual. Until the next time we have you on the show, take care.
All right. Thanks for having me, Moshe.
Our pleasure.